welcome to the Pace of San Diego. How did the women of today gain their rights? In 18th and 19th century America, women couldn't vote, hold office, own property independently, sign legal documents, or enter most professions. By the 1840s, that began to change when many bold, outspoken women championed many social reforms, including suffrage, prison reform, improving education systems, prohibition, and the abolition of slavery. Today, we have the pleasure of meeting author, actress, and historian Annette Hubbell, whose book Eternity Through the Rearview Mirror reflects 17 lives who changed the course of history. Welcome to our show, Annette.
Thank you, Marlene. It's great to be here.
Were you always interested in writing and acting?
Not really, unless you count the 7th grade play, Scheherazade. I remember that, but I must admit I've had a very varied and eclectic background, so I guess it's not too much of a stretch to think that acting would be part of it. I've always been interested in how people work together, communicate, and in my job, political interaction was always there. I'd worked specifically for state senator, for supervisor, city council persons, a mayor, and then generally with local, state, and federal officials, mainly in areas of water policy, water distribution. There was even some beer and wine regulation, environmental issues. Okay. I finished my career as a general manager of a water district in San Diego County.
That's far away from writing and acting.
Yes,
so how did the acting actually come about?
I had not thought of doing acting out of that book, but a friend came to me desperate because in a few days she was giving this huge event and the speaker canceled. And she was in a panic. She says, "Can you talk about the characters in your book?" I hadn't even finished the book yet. So I did, and it evolved from there, became a reader's theater, and then eventually a one-woman play in which I portrayed 8 historical women.
Really? And one of your books, Eternity Through a Rearview Mirror, speaks about 17 world changers, men and women, whose lives certainly made our lives better, much better. And the commonality between the subjects you chose is their unending faith. They're a very eclectic bunch, right?
Yes.
How did you put them together?
Well, it's true. They all very publicly gave credit to God for their accomplishments. I started with Galileo and I ended with Johnny Cash. So it is a very eclectic group. And amongst them were Johann Sebastian Bach, Abraham Lincoln, C.S. Lewis, Harriet Tubman, and the like. And I just wanted to write about people whose lives could inspire and invigorate us and illuminate for us the indomitable human spirit powered by God. Martin Luther King, Dr. King, once said, "The ultimate measure of a person is not where they stand in times of comfort and convenience, but where they stand in times of challenge and controversy." And so you'll see plenty of that here. I did not take into consideration their station in life, their gender, or their ethnicity. And I also wanted their lives to be researchable and verifiable and quotable. I wanted to use as many of their own words as possible.
And that's so you are saying, like Martin Luther King stated, you did not choose your subjects for their ethnicity, but I understand you got into a little bit of trouble about that. Could you tell us about it?
Oh, yes. I chose them, to paraphrase Dr. King, for the content of their character. And well, I made it on the list of approved performers for the San Diego County library system, not the city, but the county, and there's 41 libraries. Mm-hmm. And it was quite a lengthy process. It included a background check, and they knew all of the characters I was performing. And I got a call from a library asking me to perform 3 specific characters: Harriet Beecher Stowe, Mary McLeod Bethune, and Harriet Tubman. And I should mention that 2 of them are black. Black women. And a couple weeks before the show, I got a call from the Central Division of the library system saying, "We've changed our mind. We've decided that it's inappropriate and offensive for you as a white woman to portray black people." And I said, "Oh, no, you don't understand. I'm honoring these women and She said, that doesn't matter. And I said, you mean I can only honor women of courage and integrity if they're white? And she said, yes, that's about it.
That's about it, huh?
Yeah.
And you reminded them about the Black and Hispanic actors in the very famous stage play Hamilton.
I did. I did.
About our nation's founding fathers who were all white, right?
Yes, I did. And when I said that, she said, oh, that's historically different. And I'm thinking of the Black women, Harriet Tubman, that I portray, and Mary McLeod Bethune, and Sojourner Truth. And so I said, I don't understand. Can you explain that? And she said, I can't explain it, and I'm quite baffled that you don't understand.
And did you change your characters?
No, based on our conversation, I refused to change my characters, and they rescinded the invitation.
Oh my gosh. And then the San Diego Union Tribune wrote a big article about that controversial situation.
Yes.
I found it very fascinating, and I got a hold of you, and that is how you ended up here today.
A friend of mine who I hadn't spoken to in 20 years saw the article, and she called me, and she said, San Diego might not want you, but Montgomery, Alabama wants you. And so they invited me out. I flew out, performed to a very wide mix of audience for 27 people in their home.
Wow.
And then they catered dinner, and afterwards we all talked about these wonderful people.
So one of the characters that we're going to see you perform is Sojourner Truth, who lived from 1797 to 1883. She became an outspoken advocate for abolition, civil, and women's rights in the 19th century. Her Civil War work earned her an invitation to meet President Abraham Lincoln in 1864. And she was also the very first Black woman to take a white man to court and win, right?
Win.
Okay. So Annette, give us a little Sojourner Truth from your play.
The world will always have causes worth fighting for. No lack of personal wrongs to right either. I should know. I had my share of both. Born 1797 in a Dutch house, New York. Born a slave. The first 30 years of my life were marked by verbal and physical beatings, especially from the master and mistress Dumont. Didn't matter that I was most of 6 feet tall, arms muscular from work, and a back that showed a strong will. Slave did not return a fight or talk. The Dumonts doled out physical, sexual abuse to me regular. The two of them. The master was the kinder of the two. The master did help me to learn English. I thank him for that. But from a Dutch-speaking house, I couldn't figure a word of what they were telling me to do. Were it not for their beatings whenever I couldn't decipher a command, now, to motivate me, I might never have been inspired to learn it. But 30 years of it was enough. It was time to get away, but I didn't know how. And this thought jumped into my head. Leave just before the day dawns and get out of the neighborhood where he was known before people are much astir. So be it. Tattered clothes, no shoes on my feet, I took with me some food, my own food wrapped in a kerchief, and daughter Sophia. I should have left her with my other 3, for none of them belonged to me. But she was little and needed me. So I walked and I walked and I walked until I came to the house that God had put in my head for me to see. Turned out it belonged to a Quaker couple. They nicely paid $20 for me, $5 for baby, keeping her safe for a year till New York Freedom's Day arrived. Oh, now freedom. Freedom. As soon as it was safe, I left my Quaker family, learned to dress proper, and became a traveling preacher, putting up posters wherever I went. Now, I can't read, but I know what that say. My name, Sojourner Truth. It also say, for a fee, I will gladly give you a photograph of me and sing you a song. I sold the shadow to support the substance. I traveled up and down the line, up and down the land, tending to those in need, holding prayer meetings, leading others in song. For I have a rich and powerful voice. I spoke fiercely against slavery. Never minding the words that would come out of my mouth, just depending on the Holy Spirit to put the right words in there. I was particularly partial to the words that came out of my mouth at that women's convention out in Akron in 1851. So partial that I'll leave you folks with a rendition of it. I'll even use my speech and voice. May I say a few words? I would like to say a few words about this matter. I am a woman's rights. I have as much muscle as any man, and can do as much work as any man. I have plowed and reaped and husked and chopped and mowed, and can any man do more than that? I have heard much about the sexes being equal. I can carry as much as any man, and eat as much too, if I can get it. I am as strong as any man today. As for intellect, if man have a quart and woman a pint, why can't she have her little pint full? Poor men seem to be all in confusion and don't know what to do. Why, children, if you have women's rights, give it to her. You will have your own rights, and they won't be so much trouble. Well, I can't read, but I can hear, and I have heard the Bible and learned that Eve caused man to sin. Well, if woman upset the world, do give her a chance to set it right side up again.
Sojourner Truth, one amazing woman.
She was a slave, freedom fighter, a helper to others. She lived until she was 86 years old, and she always got involved in a good cause worth fighting.
And now we come to author and abolitionist Harriet Beecher Stowe, 1811 to 1896. Born into a prominent Connecticut family, she wrote the very popular novel Uncle Tom's Cabin, which depicts the evil, harsh conditions experienced by those sold into slavery.
I don't know how it escaped me, but for many years I was not mindful of slavery as a living institution. I had avoided all reading upon or allusion to its subject, considering it too painful to be inquired into.
Scenes of blood and cruelty are shocking to the ear and heart. What man has nerve to do, man does not have nerve to hear. I turned away from what was happening right across the Ohio River in the slave state of Kentucky. I could not keep at bay for the moral horrors of slavery. They began to invade my thoughts and my writings. Look about you now, Harriet. What do you see? Look at these desperate plight of the enslaved mother. Her baby wrenched from her arms. Would she ever see him again? Comfort him again? Whisper, I love you again. It was 1851, and the answer came with great clarity. I had been in the chapel praying when all of a sudden, the cross before me transformed itself, a vision, if you will, into that of a man, a slave, bleeding and dying because he was being flogged to death. I seized upon it. I ran home and began to write down everything I knew about slavery. When I ran out of writing paper, as if in a frenzy, I used the brown paper the groceries had been delivered in. I read everything I could get my hands on, and my eyes opened to that wicked fugitive slave business for what it was. Alvin and I became part of the underground, harboring fugitive slaves all the while listening to their stories. I made friends with former slaves. I had to know not just what was happening to them, but what was happening inside of them. They became characters in a story. Eliza, Dinah, Topsy, Henry, Eva. The slave in my vision became Tom in my novel. Published in 1852, no one, least of all me, was prepared for the country's reaction. 3,000 copies sold at their first day. 10,000 in 4 days. 17 printing presses running round the clock required to meet the country's first-year demands of more than 300,000 copies. Why, this book became the bestseller, behind the Bible, of the entire 19th century. All without benefit of your social media, I might add. This book made more money for us in its first 4 months than Calvin could have made teaching in an entire decade. This book raised the nation's conscience and energized the anti-slavery movement. Indeed, when I met President Lincoln, he shook my hand with a smile and a wink. So, you're the little lady that wrote that book that started this great war.
And finally, we'll meet the Dutch watchmaker Corrie ten Boom, 1892 to 1983, who, along with her family, harbored hundreds of Jews amid the Nazi Holocaust to protect them from arrest during World War II. It's believed their efforts saved nearly 800 lives.
Most everyone, at some time or another, has played the childhood game of hide-and-go-seek. Run, hide, hold, stock still, until it's safe to come out. Oh, but cloak and dagger fun. In the 1940s world of Nazi occupation, though, this was a real-life game, and no fun at all. Fraught with danger, your life depended on how well you could hide, in plain sight or otherwise. Your life depended on the secrets you could keep. Living in Harlem, we ten Booms were a devout Christian family, and we considered it our privilege to pray every night for generations for our Jewish brethren. Oh, we'd always help anyone in need, too, believing everyone to be part of God's family. But now, we've risked our lives every day to conceal Jews from the Nazi police. The first floor of our home was taken up by our watch repair shop. We were watchmakers by trade. Me, my father, and his father before him. We built a secret room upstairs within the walls, like a little clothes closet so people could hide in it. You didn't even know it was there. We practiced escape drills, hiding drills all day and into the night. Imagine so many people coming and going from our home. Everyone knew to be home to just an old watchmaker and his 2 spinster daughters, Betsy and me. Yes, everywhere, suspicious eyes. Yes, every moment filled with fear. 1944, February 28. The Gestapo burst into our home and arrested everyone they could find. As hard as they searched, however, they never found that secret room. Oh, they knew there must have been one somewhere. What they didn't know was that huddled inside were 6 terror-stricken Jewish fugitives. Pitch-black room so small, all there was room for was to stand. They didn't dare move for fear of making a noise and being discovered. They didn't dare move until it was safe to come out. For 47 hours, they didn't dare move. We ten Booms weren't so lucky. We were imprisoned. After 6 months, Betsy and I were put on this train packed in like cattle. No room to move. No food. No water. After 3 days on that train, we arrived at Ravensbrück, the women's death camp north of Berlin. Famished, exhausted, they marched us to our barracks. There was a driving rainstorm. There were dozens of these barracks, each building built for 400. Did they care when our numbers swelled to 400 plus 1,000 more? As newcomers, we were forced to remove our clothing, throw our few possessions into a great growing pile, and pray naked in front of the leering gods, after which they would give us flimsy prison garb. Oh, Betsy, I'm here. We'll get through this together. I managed to hold back this hidden little treasure. But as we move forward in the line, I begin to, fear clutching in my heart, my pulse racing, panic-stricken. What was I thinking? How would I get this past them? It was just a little Bible hidden in a pouch hanging down my back. And what would they do to us? Betsy suddenly took intensely ill, and they let us run to the bathroom, such as it was. Use the drain hole, the guard snapped, and then get back in line. There was a bench in there. I hid that little pouch underneath and retrieved it later, never thinking how important that one little act would become. If the work or the gas chamber didn't kill us, the disease, the starvation and the cold, or the beatings, or the despair would try its best. The gods hated us for their miserable lives. Armed with batons and attack dogs, the slightest provocation, usually imagined, would bring down the clubs, let loose the dogs. We were forced to witness depravities of the worst kind. The barracks were crowded and filthy beyond belief. The rooms were alive with bedbugs and fleas. The rats and roaches scurried across our bodies at night. Lice crawled across our face and burrowed into our skin. Somehow, you got used to it. Ravensbrück saw 96,000 people, women to their death. My sweet Betsy was one of them. With her last breath, she extracted a promise from me to tell the world of the healing that can happen when one forgives another. 3 days after Betsy's death, paperwork appeared ordering my release. I was no one special. Over the next 33 years, I prayed for the 800 people our family were able to get to safety before they stopped us. I wrote many books, traveled the world, taking our message of forgiveness to people in 60 countries.
It was while on the lecture circuit that I discovered even I had more to learn about forgiveness. This one particular time, as I was finishing my story, a man stood up out of the audience and began walking down the aisle towards me, his arms stretched out, tears running down his face. He came asking me for my forgiveness. He told me who he was, but he didn't have to. This Ravensbrück guard, I believed, responsible for Betsy's death. Oh, I remembered him. And there it was, all that anger and bitterness burning in my heart, trying to take root there. But I knew that forgiveness was the key. I also knew that it was more than an emotion. It was an act of the will, and the will can function regardless of the coldness in the heart. And so I prayed, God, I cannot do this. I can lift my hand, I can do that much, but you're going to have to do the rest. And so, woodenly, mechanically, I stretched my hand out to his. And as I did, the most incredible thing happened. I can only explain it like an electrical current started rolling around in my body, and it gathered into my shoulder and sprang down my arm and into our joined hands. And at that moment, the most incredible feeling of warmth seemed to flood my whole being, bringing the tears to my eyes. I forgive you, brother.
I like the quote by Rudyard Kipling, if all history were told in stories, it would never be forgotten. So true.
And I like what Winston Churchill said, the farther back you can look, the farther forward you are likely to see. But I say, you really can glimpse eternity through the rearview mirror.
You really can. What are your plans for the future?
Well, I would like to continue working on the stage and maybe writing a little bit, but what I really want to do, what I've really enjoyed, is something I've termed parlor theater. Mm-hmm. You know, back before television and radio and all this social media, people are always on their phones and scrolling, they would invite guests to their home for a meal and then some entertainment, a singer or a quartet or a storyteller. I want to be that storyteller. And then we can have dinner and talk about things that really matter to people.
And people can reach you on your website, www.ANNETTEHUBBELL.com. Annette, I want to thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome.
And sharing your remarkable stories with us. You are really a women warrior.
Thank you.
Sometimes in life, we need to pause, reflect, and be grateful for those brave and influential people who gave us our freedoms and voices. This is just as important today as it was then. Women all over the world have to keep fighting for their rights, like the warriors before them. It's so vital to stay focused and to put our faith in the equality that we deserve. Thank you for watching The Pace of San Diego.